Hey guys, welcome back to another daily devotion from Devotable. My name is Landon, and I am the creator and founder of Devotable, and it is my pleasure to get to read to you another daily devotion today. If you don't know what Devotable is, or this is your first time, Devotable is simply a daily devotional project where we take over 100 authors and we create devotional content that inspires believers daily and spreads the word of God around the world as far as we can. If you want to learn more about all the cool things we do, including this podcast, our social media channels, the books and compilation projects that we put together, you can go to devotableapp.com, connect with us on our website, and learn all about the cool things that we are doing. Today is episode 289 of the Daily Devotion Podcast, and today's episode is titled, Trust in the Light, and was contributed by Kyle Chastain. Today's verse is 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7 NLT, and it reads, For we live by believing and not seeing. You can settle for a life of certainty, but certainty can only provide comfort for so long. Jesus didn't promise his followers certainty in life apart from his presence. When you're lost and have no idea what to do, trust in the light to show you where to go. Let's talk about how we can trust in the light that is Jesus Christ each and every day, even in uncertain circumstances, even when we don't know or we can't see what's going on. Have you ever driven down a highway at night? I grew up in a very rural part of western North Carolina. I remember how easy it was to get lost on those country backroads at night. If you didn't know where you were going, you had no business being on the road after dark. Alone at night on a county highway, the only light you have comes from the headlights of your car. You can only see about 20 feet ahead of you, which is just enough time to stop if you need to. Out where there weren't many cars, it's hard to know where there's danger or an obstacle ahead. Fallen trees, animals, and, in the winter, black ice were all commonplace. The only thing you could do was trust in the light. If there was danger far out ahead of you, there was rarely any warning. You had to trust the light and be prepared. It's funny because sometimes life is like driving along on one of those country roads on a winter night. You never know what to expect. All you can do is trust the light. I know you want to know what's coming. I understand things are scary right now and everything is uncertain. But if you knew what was around the corner, you might turn back. Part of living by faith means you have to move without clear evidence. In other words, sometimes you have to go and trust the light will show you what you need to know at the right time. Sometimes walking by faith means you have to act on urges or promptings that other people can't see. You will find yourself in a position where you have to trust the process and not the way things look right now. It takes guts to live by faith. It requires you to address your beliefs and what you need to know in life. You come face to face with who you are when you are under pressure. You can settle for a life of certainty, but certainty can only provide comfort for so long. Eventually, it gets old, and you start seeking novel experiences to add variety to your life. Or you become so fearful of new experiences that you slowly die inside. Jesus didn't promise his followers certainty in life apart from his presence. When you're lost and you have no idea what to do, trust in the light to show you where to go. Kyle, man, thank you so much for writing this devotion. I connect with this devotion on so many levels, and there's so many little pieces of good, applicable information in this devotion, and I want to point out a couple of them. But first, I know exactly what you're talking about because I grew up in a smaller town in Missouri. And so we have exactly what you have. I lived with my parents out kind of in the country. And so whenever I got my license and became able to drive, I'd have to navigate country roads to and from my school, to and from my church, to and from most of my friends' houses. I was all the time driving back country farm roads and occasionally 2-lane highways. And I know exactly what you're talking about, in that at night, you have to rely on your headlights in order to show you what's coming. You have no idea what is in the road 30, 40, 50 feet in front of you. Now, hindsight is 20/20, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, how did I even survive driving in those conditions as a teenager? Now, I've always been a fairly good driver, but as most teenagers are, you first get your license. It's just inexperience that contributes to some bad driving habits. And so I'm sitting here thinking, how in the world did I survive my teenage years driving down those country roads? And how did I not get in a wreck? How did I not hit a deer or hit an animal or all of the number of things? And I didn't even care about that stuff when I was growing up. I didn't even think twice about driving down one of those country farm roads at 55, 60 miles an hour and slamming into a deer or a deer running out in front of me and causing me to swerve and go careening off the road into the ditch at 55 miles an hour. That would have been my death sentence right there. But I didn't even think twice about that. But now that I'm older and maybe a little bit more wiser, whenever I'm driving those same country roads, I'm way more diligent and way more aware of my surroundings, constantly looking for deer or animals or black ice in winter for sure. Any sort of obstacle ahead, I'm constantly focused on that because I've got wife in the passenger seat and a couple kids in the back. But your point here is exactly right. We still don't know what's down the road. Even now, I don't know what's down the road a half a mile. I don't know if there's a deer laying in the middle of the road or if there's a cow who's got out of the fence that's sitting in the middle of the road, which is a very real possibility because I know people that have actually hit cows because they've been sitting or standing in the middle of the road and they didn't see them until it was too late. And when a car hits a cow, it never ends up good. But that's so much like our spiritual walk. Sometimes we can't see what's down the road into next week or next month or even next year. Sometimes we have to just go and we have to take steps of faith, knowing that when the time is right, God will reveal his plan to us. And we have to trust in the fact that this is what God has asked us to do. And we are taking leaps of faith and steps of faith. Even though we may not have all the details, we have to understand that if God has asked us to do something, we need to continue to walk in faith to do that, regardless of if we know what's going to happen tomorrow or the next week or the next day. Sometimes, like you say, we have to act on urges or promptings that other people can't necessarily see. We find ourselves in a position where we have to trust in the process. We have to trust that God is working through the process and not necessarily the way that things look right now. Things may not be rosy and peachy right now. That project that you started, that you stepped out on faith to do, may not look very good right now. That business that you started, that you felt God was calling you to start, may not be quite successful right now. Stepping out on faith to go witness to someone or to share the gospel with someone may have been greeted with animosity, or maybe have been greeted with a cold shoulder, or maybe some harsh words, and that may not look good right now. But it takes guts to live by faith. It takes courage to step out and do those things, even though you don't have a clue what is gonna happen down the road. The Christian life is just like that. It is so much like driving down those country roads where you can just see sometimes what's 20 feet ahead of you, and that's about it. And we have to trust and live by faith that God is going to clear the road and clear the path for us, and that we trust him to do that and to provide and to protect us. The best part of this devotion is at the end, when it says we can settle for a life of certainty. We can hold back and we can be comfortable the way that we are right now. Like I said before, when we were talking about back in the summer or maybe the late spring when we were going through quarantine and everybody was kind of staying home, it's a really comfortable life to not do anything and just stay at home all day. It's a really easy life to walk out of my bedroom in sweatpants, sit down on the couch and watch a church service, and then call that good for the day. It's a really easy life to walk down the stairs in my sweatpants and come to my office and do a couple things for a couple hours and then call it a day and then maybe go read a book and cook a meal and maybe play some video games or maybe play some card games with my family. That life was pretty easy. And although that life did teach me to slow down a little bit and I don't have to say yes to everything, it actually behooves me to say no to things. That life was really easy, and we can settle for a life of certainty. But you know what? That life got boring after a while. It really did. And I enjoyed the slowing down, I enjoyed the time to spend with my family, and I did learn lessons from that. But after a couple months of doing that, I got bored. I got antsy. I wanted to go do things. I wanted to go eat at restaurants. I wanted to go back to church. I wanted to go to parks with my kids and play on the playground equipment. I wanted to go do things. I wanted to go see a movie. I still want to go do a lot of those things. And that life of certainty and ease provides comfort for a short time, but then gets boring. And we'll either start to seek novel experiences to end the boredom, or we'll become so comfortable that we become fearful of doing things the Lord has asked us to do because it gets us out of that ease. It gets us out of that comfort zone. So where do you want to be as a Christian? Where do you want to be? Do you want to be inside that little box of comfort, inside your little four walls, never venturing out, never taking a risk for God's kingdom? Never sharing your faith or starting something that you know may be hard, but that you're being asked to do? Or do you want to step out on faith and drive those country roads, even though you know there's risks, even though you know there's deer that could run out at any moment, or there's black ice that's down the road that you may hit, and you may actually go spinning out of control, or heaven forbid, there's a cow standing in the middle of the road obstructing your ability to get by. And then you may have to wait for a little bit. You may have to wait on God's timing. Heaven forbid some of those things happen. But that's exactly what we're called to do. We're not called to a life of certainty. We're not called to a life of ease. If you think that that's true, I challenge you to show me in the Bible where any of Christ's followers have a life of ease and comfort. They may have a time in their life of comfort and ease and assurance, but the majority of the early Christians, the majority of the early followers, especially the disciples and the early followers, had very difficult lives of uncertainty, not comfortable at all. Most of them died martyrs because they believed in what they were walking. They believed in their faith and they continued to walk that road. That's what we're called to do. We're called to live by believing and not seeing. What a challenge to us today. What a challenge to us as Christians to move out of our comfort zones. Thank you, Kyle, for giving us this challenge. Thank you for the application that I especially can relate to. Thank you so much for sharing your words with us and just giving us this challenge to think about as we end 2020 and we come into 2021. How we as Christians can continue to move forward in our faith walk, even though we don't really know what is coming next year. With all of the uncertainty in our world, in our country, in our politics, in mandates and shutdowns and mask ordinances and all the stuff that's coming down, we have to continue to step out on faith and walk as God leads us. Guys, if you want to learn more about Kyle, I would encourage you to go follow him and all of the writing that he does. He blogs and he writes a lot over on medium.com. You can check out his profile at the top or the bottom of today's devotion, or by clicking on his profile picture in the Devotable mobile app. That'll take you to his profile. You can follow him on all of the social media places that he has listed. Go give him some cheers, some follows. Leave some feedback on his devotions. He's an awesome writer. He's a husband, dad to 2 boys, blogs and writes, I would encourage you guys to go support him. Thank you, Kyle, for being a part of Devotable and giving us your words and challenge today. And lastly, guys, if you want to leave me a prayer request that I can mention and I can talk about on this podcast, where people all around the world can hear and can lift that prayer request up, there's a couple different ways that you can do that. First, you can join us on Facebook. We have a prayer group, facebook.com, and you can search for the Devotable Power in Prayer group. Leave us a prayer request there. Let us know how you're doing, what you're doing, and what we can pray for you about. And then secondly, if you go to devotableapp.com/prayer request, you can leave me a written or a voice recorded prayer request that I could include on this podcast and mention it to people who are listeners so that we could take that prayer request to the throne of grace and lift it up to God for you. I certainly believe in the power of prayer, and I believe you have Christians all around the world praying for you. That is a powerful thing. Guys, thank you so much for being with me today. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast and supporting what we do. I hope that you guys have a wonderful day, a wonderful week. Stay safe and healthy, and I will catch you on the next podcast. Thank you guys for joining me again today for another daily devotion. It is truly my honor to get to read these devotions for you guys as we dive deeper into God's Word each and every day. Like I mentioned before, if you want to learn more about Devotable and all of the cool stuff that we do, head on over to devotableapp.com and you can learn all about the things that we do over there. I would also like to take a couple of minutes, if you're still listening with me, and talk about a project that we have coming up. So last year we did an amazing book project on prayer. It was a 26-week devotional compilation and prayer journal, talking about different aspects of prayer from the scriptures, and then giving some journaling pages to allow you to journal throughout the week. And you can find that project on our website. The book is titled Prayer, Approaching the Throne of Grace. But I'm super excited to move into another project that we're working on. This one is going to be a 16-week devotional and journal around the subject of equality. This is something that I'm passionate about. This is something that I think that we, as Christians, if we have a platform like Devotable, we have a responsibility to speak up and to talk about equality from a Christian perspective. This not only is a devotional, it is also a family journal. So much like the previous project on prayer, this is going to be a journal, but it's also going to be a family journal because I think this is an important topic that we need to talk about with our family and with our children. We need to educate our children about the importance of equality, and not just racial equality, but gender equality, and then talking about other sorts of equality as well. Guys, we are all one race created in the image of God, and there is no room for prejudice in the Christian life, and it's important that we speak out against all forms of prejudice. I'm super excited. We are right in the middle of working on this project, and with God's help, we'll be able to have this project out by the holiday season. But if you want to learn more about that project, stay tuned to this podcast or go follow us on social media, as I'm going to be starting to post more about that project because we're getting into the depths of that project. And lastly, I want to take a couple of seconds and just talk about this. Devotable takes a lot of resources to run. We have a lot of different writers who graciously write for us for free. But we also have development and advertising costs. We have website hosting costs and marketing costs and all of these things that we try to pay for out of the money that Devotable makes on these book projects. But by and large, Devotable is a free project. We don't charge for anything but our books. And it takes quite a bit to run Devotable each and every day. So if Devotable is something that you enjoy, if it's something that you enjoy partaking in or sharing with others, or just reading the devotions and they're blessing you in one way or another, I would encourage you to think about becoming a Patreon partner with us. For as little as $1 a month, you can partner with us via our Patreon page and help us out financially. And it would truly be a blessing to me if you guys would consider doing that. You can learn more about that at devotableapp.com/contribute and click on the Patreon link. Thank you so much, guys, for being with me, and I hope you have a wonderful day.